For 40 years, California was the promised land, the place where fortunes were made, where dreams didn't just happen, they exploded into reality. People didn't move to California. They migrated to California, like pilgrims to a holy site. They came for the jobs, the weather, the possibility. They came believing that if they could just make it in California, they'd made it everywhere. But something shifted, not gradually. Not in a way that crept up slowly, but noticeably, visibly. People who had always said they'd never leave started packing. Families who had put down roots for decades suddenly uprooted. Retirees who had built their entire lives around California. Sunshine were moving to Texas. Young professionals who had sacrificed everything for Bay Area salaries were heading to Florida. Even immigrants, people who had moved to America specifically to get to California, were leaving. The headlines called it the Great Migration Out of California. But the real story isn't that California is losing people. The real story is why and what it means for the entire country, because California isn't just a state. It's the economic engine of America. It's the fifth largest economy in the world. If California is in trouble, if people are voting with their feet and leaving, that tells you something profound is broken. And the reason they're leaving isn't what you think, the promise that shaped a generation. To understand what's happening now, you need to understand what California represented. In the 1980s and 1990s, California was unstoppable. The tech industry was emerging. Silicon Valley was becoming synonymous with innovation and wealth creation. A high school graduate could learn to code and make six figures. A startup founder could build $1 billion company in a garage. The EI, aerospace industry, entertainment, agriculture. California dominated entire sectors. The promise was simple. Come to California, work hard, and you could build a life that wasn't possible anywhere else. Your kids could go to world-class universities. The weather was perfect year-round. If you were ambitious, talented, or willing to work, California would reward you. And for decades it did. People believed in this narrative so deeply that they were willing to accept trade-offs. Housing was expensive, that was the price of opportunity. Traffic was brutal, worth it for the jobs. The cost of living was insane. You'd make it back with California salaries. This wasn't just economic calculation, it was identity. Moving to California meant you were a winner. You were ambitious. You were willing to bet on yourself. And California, the great meritocracy, would reward your faith. Millions of people made that bet. They liquidated savings. They burned bridges with family back home. They took lower salaries to get the job, betting they'd climb the ladder in California. They bought overpriced houses because they believed prices would keep rising forever. They endured earthquakes, wildfires, traffic, and pollution because California was worth it. This wasn't rational. It was almost religious, and it worked for a long time. The crack in the facade, then something changed. It started subtly. Around 2015-2016, people noticed that housing prices weren't just high, they were becoming untethered from reality. A modest two-bedroom house in the Bay Area was pushing $1 million. Los Angeles, which had always been expensive, suddenly required $800,000 to $1 million just for something basic. San Diego, which had been slightly cheaper, was following the same trajectory. But what made this different from the normal California premium was the speed and the intensity. These weren't gradual increases over a generation. These were 30, 40, sometimes 50% jumps in just 2 or 3 years. People who had bought homes 10 years earlier were sitting on massive equity. That was wonderful for them. But it meant that young people moving to California, the exact demographic that had fueled California's growth for decades, couldn't afford to enter the housing market at all. Then came the pandemic. California issued some of the strictest lockdowns in the country. Beaches were closed, parks were closed, restaurants were shut. For a state that sold itself on quality of life and freedom, it felt like a betrayal. Meanwhile, people could work remotely. And if you're working remotely, why stay in California paying $2,000 a month for rent when you could move to Texas or Arizona and pay $800? The outflow started slow. Then it became a flood. Between 2020 and 2023, California experienced a net outmigration that shocked the state government. Hundreds of thousands of people left, not gradually over decades, in just a few years. The state that had been the destination for American ambition was now the place people were escaping, and the people leaving weren't poor people seeking opportunity elsewhere. They were middle-class workers, entrepreneurs, and young professionals, exactly the people California needed to maintain its economic dominance. Understanding the unraveling. Here's where it gets complicated, because the story isn't just about housing or the pandemic. It's about a state that had stopped delivering on its promise. Start with housing. A software engineer working remotely can make $150,000 a year. In California, that's barely middle class. Your mortgage payment alone might be $3,000 to $4,000 a month. Add property taxes, which are incredibly high in California, and you're looking at $5,000 a month for housing alone. For many people, that's not sustainable anymore. But housing is just the beginning. California's taxes are among the highest in the nation. Income tax tops out at 13.3%, the highest in the country. Sales tax is high. Gas taxes are high. Property taxes, which were supposed to be capped by Proposition 13, have become Byzantine and unequal. If you own a home that hasn't changed hands, your taxes are low. If you buy a similar home next door, your taxes are dramatically higher. The system is fractured and expensive. Then there's the quality of life that California was selling. The state has world-class universities, but the public schools in many areas are struggling. Homelessness in major California cities is staggering. Walk through downtown San Francisco, Los Angeles, or San Diego, and you see tent encampments, open drug use, and visible suffering that feels inescapable. For people considering staying in or moving to California, this isn't a minor issue. It's a daily reality that undermines the entire value proposition. Traffic is brutal. The commute for many workers is not 30 minutes or an hour, it's 2 to 3 hours a day. That's time stolen from your life, families, and health. For what? To live in California. The wildfire situation has become desperate. Every year, massive. Wildfires threaten entire regions. Insurance is becoming unaffordable. Some insurers have stopped insuring homes in California entirely. The idea of living someplace where your entire home could be destroyed, where insurance might be impossible to get, and where the air quality during fire season makes it dangerous to breathe, that's not a quality of life situation, that's a liability. Electricity costs are among the highest in the nation. Gasoline costs more than anywhere else in America. Water restrictions and drought concerns persist. For a state that once symbolized unlimited possibility, California increasingly felt limited, expensive, and frustrating. Where people are actually going, so where are these Californians going? Texas is the big winner. Between 2020 and 2023, over 600,000 people moved from California to Texas. That's not a trickle. That's a major demographic shift. Why Texas? Lower taxes, no state income tax, cheaper housing, jobs in tech, finance, and energy sectors. Growing cities like Austin and Dallas offering California-level opportunity without California-level costs. But here's what's surprising. Austin is becoming too expensive too. Startups have migrated to Austin. Tech companies have opened offices. Real estate investors have driven up prices. Housing costs that used to be 60% lower than the Bay Area are now only 30 to 40% lower. Austin is becoming California, and people are already starting to move out of Austin to less trendy Texas cities. Florida has also absorbed hundreds of thousands of Californians. Retirees are leaving California for Florida's lack of state income tax and warmer winters. But working-age people are moving there too, for jobs in finance, real estate, and services. Miami is becoming a major tech hub, attracting some of the same companies and entrepreneurs that once clustered in Silicon Valley. Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina, and Tennessee have all seen major inflows from California. They offer the same formula: lower cost of living, lower taxes, job opportunities, and escape from California's specific pain points. What's notable is that this isn't people giving up ambition and moving to small towns to retire. These are working-age people, entrepreneurs, and families making calculated decisions that California is no longer worth the trade-offs. The human side of the exodus. Let's put this in personal terms because that's where the real story lives. Jennifer, 38, worked as a project manager in San Francisco for 12 years. She had a good job, made decent money, but could never quite save enough to buy a home. She was renting a one-bedroom apartment for $2,400 a month. After taxes, rent, and basic expenses, she had almost nothing left. Her friends were in the same boat. People in their late 30s, professional, educated, working good jobs, and yet financially precarious. In 2022, her company announced it was opening a remote work option. Suddenly, she didn't have to be in San Francisco to keep her job. Within weeks, she moved to Phoenix. Her rent dropped to $1,200 a month. Her taxes decreased. Her money went further. Within a year, she had saved enough for a down payment on a house, something that would have taken her 15 years in San Francisco. Or consider David, 52, who had built a successful business in Los Angeles. He was doing well financially. But in 2021, a combination of factors pushed him out. Rising property taxes, insurance premiums skyrocketing, local regulations making his business more complicated. He sold his business, packed his family, and moved to Austin. He started a new business. Lower costs, fewer regulations, and no state income tax. His quality of life improved immediately. Or Maria, 61, a former teacher who had lived in California her entire life. She had retired early with a modest pension. California's cost of living was eating into her savings. Her small apartment's rent was rising yearly. She was stressed about running out of money. She moved to Tucson, Arizona. Her rent is $500 a month cheaper. She can afford to live on her pension. She's actually relaxed for the first time in years. These aren't rare stories. They're happening thousands of times a day. Californians calculating the cost-benefit analysis and deciding that somewhere else offers more opportunity, more stability, more life quality, and fewer financial constraints. What this means for California, here's where this gets serious. A state's power and prosperity depend on having ambitious, talented, productive people. California has historically attracted the world's best, the smartest entrepreneurs, the most driven workers, the people willing to take risks and build things. That immigration of talent is what powered California's dominance. But now the reverse is happening. California is exporting its best people. Young professionals, entrepreneurs, and mid-career workers are leaving. Some states are actively recruiting them, offering tax incentives and highlighting quality of life. This creates a vicious cycle. As talented people leave, companies face brain drain. As companies struggle to find talent, some relocate offices to cheaper, faster-growing states. As companies move, fewer jobs exist in California. As fewer jobs exist, more people leave. The cycle accelerates. We're not at catastrophic levels yet, but the direction is clear. California is no longer a growth state. It's a state where population is stagnating. The census showed that California's growth rate has slowed to a crawl. For the first time in decades, other states are growing faster. Texas, Florida, and Arizona are becoming the destination states. This has implications for California's political power. Representation in Congress is tied to population. If California stops growing while other states grow, California's congressional representation will decline. Its electoral votes will become less crucial. Its voice in national politics will diminish. It also has implications for California's tax base. The state relies heavily on income tax from high earners. If those high earners are leaving, tax revenue shrinks. Services become more expensive for fewer people. The budget situation becomes tighter. The surprising insight: it's not all leaving, but here's something that complicates the narrative. Not all of California is losing people at the same rate. Coastal cities, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, are experiencing significant outmigration. But inland California, the agricultural regions and smaller cities are more stable. And surprisingly, some wealthy people are moving to California, attracted by specific advantages: world-class universities, cultural institutions, media industry, entertainment, and for some, just the status of living in California. California is sorting itself into a two-tier system. The wealthy can afford California and will stay or move there for the cultural and professional advantages. The middle class and working class can no longer afford it and are leaving. The result is increasing economic stratification. Also, while Californians are leaving, some people are still moving to California. Immigrants from other countries still see California as opportunity. Some retirees are moving in. Some young people, fresh from college, still want to try the California dream. The migration out is real, but it's not complete emptying. What's happening is a reshuffling. California is becoming a state for the ultra-wealthy and for immigrants. The middle-class American dream that California represented is migrating elsewhere. What this means for the rest of America. The California exodus is reshaping the entire country. Texas and Florida are growing rapidly. That means infrastructure. Housing, jobs, and services are booming. But it also means those states are becoming more expensive. Austin is a perfect example. It was cheap, then talented people moved there, then companies moved there, then housing prices skyrocketed, and now people are moving out to cheaper areas of Texas. The pattern will repeat. Some secondary city becomes the new destination. Housing prices rise. It becomes expensive. People move somewhere cheaper. The migration chase continues. We're also seeing political and cultural realignment. California had been the cultural engine of America, its values, trends and politics filtered across the nation. But as more ambitious Americans move to Texas, Florida, and Arizona, those states' cultures are becoming more influential. The country is diversifying geographically in ways that have political and cultural consequences. The brain drain from high tax, expensive states to low tax, cheaper states is real. Some economists worry this could create long-term problems. High-tax states lose revenue and talent. They potentially spiral into decline. Meanwhile, low-tax states grow wealthy and powerful. It creates regional inequality. What to watch if you're considering your own relocation, or if you're just trying to understand where America is headed? Pay attention to these signals. First, housing costs in secondary cities. If Austin becomes too expensive, where do people move? If Miami gets saturated, what's the next destination? Watch for patterns of migration moving inland and to less famous cities. Second, tax policy in different states. States without income. Taxes, Texas, Florida, Nevada, are winning. States with high income taxes are losing. If this trend continues, it could reshape state finances and politics. Third, remote work policies. Companies that remain strict about office requirements will struggle to retain talent in expensive cities. Companies flexible about remote work have access to talent anywhere. This matters for which states and cities will thrive. Fourth, quality of life factors. Safety, homelessness, schools, traffic, air quality. These are becoming decision factors, equal to or greater than salary. States that address these issues will retain people. States that don't will continue losing them. Fifth, cost of living. This is the ultimate trump card. If you can make $100,000 in California, or the same $100,000 in Texas, but your housing is half the price, the choice is obvious. The bigger picture, California's exodus is one of the most significant demographic shifts in modern American history. It's reshaping where people live, where companies operate, and where economic power is concentrated. For individuals, it's creating opportunity. There are still affordable places to build lives, buy homes, and start businesses. Not everyone has to chase the California dream. You can build a good life in many places, often with less financial stress. But for California itself, it's a reckoning. A state that believed it was special enough to command any price is discovering that people have options. A state that was the destination for American ambition is being left behind. And for the rest of America, it's a reminder that power, prosperity, and attractiveness can shift. Cities and states that seem permanent and inevitable can decline. New places can rise. The map of America is being redrawn, and it's happening faster than most people realize. The question for you is simple. If millions of people are voting with their feet and leaving, what are they seeing that you should know about?